So, this lecture is going to be about persuasion, and it's also going to be talking about collaborating as a group, whether that be writing or working together as a team. Before we do that, though, I just want to go over a few things about our syllabus. So, where we are at right now, we just turned in assignment 3. We are getting ready this week to talk about persuasion and proposals. So hopefully you had time to review the proposal PowerPoint, and hopefully you are in the process of sending your proposal to your peer. And then the next thing you're going to be doing is turning in that proposal, and then you should be starting to work on finishing up your career report and turning that in. And then this next major assignment will be your proposal assignment 5, finishing that up, and then your final presentation and your final project, which is your career portfolio. So the next major kind of topic that we'll be talking about will be digital portfolios. So I guess look forward to that. So we want to talk a little bit about persuasion, because I don't think that you can really accurately persuade someone within a proposal if you don't understand what persuasion is. And so let's talk about that. All right, so Lucas defines it as the process of creating, reinforcing, or changing people's beliefs or actions. And this is a definition that I really like to use. Lucas is someone that is kind of well known in the public speaking field. He wrote a really good textbook about obviously public speaking, and it's one that I've used for a number of years. And I'm going to just be talking about what kind of makes people change their mind about things, what convinces people to do things, and we're going to talk about a couple different models. So there are a few different ways that you can persuade people. These are the ways that I have found that have been effective. Logos, ethos, pathos, which means logic, credibility, and emotion, and those are all different appeals. Then there's the elaboration likelihood model, or what I'll refer to as ELM. There's Maslow's hierarchy of needs and Monroe's motivated sequence. So we'll go over some of these, and we'll talk about how you can use them in your proposal document and how you can use them in later business attempts or just in your life in general. So if you want to try to get someone to do something, be it to pick up a proposal or maybe to go to even a restaurant that you want them to go to, you can appeal to them in different ways. I think it depends on how they're going to respond to your attempts at persuasion. Some people are really won over by emotional appeals. Other people want to hear the cold, hard facts. I think that, again, it comes back to communication behavioral style. I know as a peacock, I like to hear the narratives. I like to hear the stories. For my husband, who is an owl, it's all about cold, hard facts. He wants the details. The devil's in the details. So if I'm using a logical appeal, this is a statistic from study that indicates low-carb diet decreases participant weight by 30%. So if you're, again, back to this whole Atkins example, if you're trying to get someone to espouse or to go for an Atkins diet, just showing people, like, look, it works. Look how these participants' weight went down. Like, that could be an appeal that would work. Maybe you're going to use somebody else's credibility in order to get them to do what you want. So maybe you have a dietitian or a nutritionist or a doctor say, this is an appropriate diet. It's that whole someone standing in a white coat telling you it's an okay thing to do. However, sometimes emotional appeals are appropriate. So looking at before or after pictures of participants gets you excited, or thinking about your own personal weight loss journey. So these are some examples of ways that you could use different appeals to try to persuade someone to do something. And we could take any number of things. Maybe we're applying for a grant, and we could use different logical appeals or ethic appeals or emotional appeals to get the funder to provide us money. This is just one example. All right. ELM, or what's called the elaboration likelihood model, was a a theory created by researchers Petty and Casebo, and they were attempting to understand the way that people process persuasive messages. They kind of thought, I think people kind of hear something, and then I think they either think about it in a central way or they generally think about it in a peripheral way. Now, that's not to say that they couldn't think about it both ways at one time, but generally their idea was that they either think about it centrally or peripherally. So if you're thinking about something in a central way, that means that it matters to you a lot. You're using critical thinking. The issue is very important to you, and you're listening to information very, very carefully. If you're listening to something peripherally, you're just relying on simple cues like a jingle, or you're listening or paying attention to how attractive the source is. So let's take a little closer example at this. We have a persuasion attempt. So maybe I'm looking at an ad, and maybe it's an ad for Fitbit. And if you don't know, Fitbit is a device that you can wear. You can either have it kind of on your hip, or you can wear it on your wrist like a watch, and it tracks your steps. And I see this commercial, and this commercial has this mom, and actually this is a real commercial. I'll upload it so you can feel kind of like what I'm talking about and really understand the message. And it's this little girl, and she's talking about her mom, and she's saying, my mom, and she's talking about her mom's journey to kind of find something. And she's talking about all the different ways that she was looking for her health. She looked for it here, she looked for it there. And the little girl talks about how her mom kind of found her way to health and nutrition, and she found it through Fitbit. And whenever I saw this message, I really processed it centrally. I had a high motivation and ability to think about the message. So we're on the top here for me in this example. I deeply care about what I the influence I have on my daughter and the impact that I have on her life. I want her to be healthy. I want her to make good decisions. The deep processing, I'm focusing on the quality of the message and the argument. Everything in that commercial really connected to me because I like to track my steps. I am somebody that's kind of nerdy. I want to know how much I sleep. And that's what Fitbit does. It tracks your sleep. It tracks your, you can log your food. It tracks your steps. It gives you goals. And then it says also that it has lasting change that resists fading to counterattacks. So what this means is that if somebody tries to speak out against Fitbit or say that it's not a quality product, because they've done such a good job persuading me that it is a quality product, I'm going to be resistant and not listen to that message. Now, if I was someone that wasn't really worried about my health, wasn't really worried about the influence that I had on my daughter, or maybe I didn't care about health and nutrition, I may have a low motivation or ability to think about the message. Maybe I'm not focused on health. I may just look at the commercial and be like, that kind of looks like a cool product. I'm just thinking about it in a very surface level kind of way. So you see in the second purple box there, it says superficial processing, focusing on the surface level features such as the attractiveness or the number of arguments presented. So what we may have there is temporarily changing the message, meaning that it could be susceptible to counterattacks. So I showed this commercial in my grant writing class, and it didn't appeal to a lot of the men in the audience because A, they're not mothers. You could tell that that commercial was attempting to persuade moms or a female audience. And it didn't really persuade a lot of people who had focus that didn't care about their health. So here we see Petty and Casebo's attempt to look at how you process a message for whether or not something is going to be persuasive or not. So I encourage you now, and this is something we would do if we were in class together, to take an ad and look at it and try to determine, am I processing this centrally or am I processing this peripherally? When you're writing your proposal, when you're creating a message for an audience, ideally we want them to process it centrally because it's going to be resistant to counterattacks, because it's going to be a stronger message. And so to do that, we have to make sure that it's something they care about, that they're motivated to care about the message, that they are going to process. The quality of the arguments have to be good. But sometimes we won't be able to. We'll have to rely on simple cues. We'll have to make sure the source is attractive. We'll have to have like jingles or music in the background that is attractive to our source. So we kind of do what we can to get what we need. Ideally hoping for central, but taking peripheral if we have to. So let's go back for just a second. Okay, so we defined persuasion, kind of know what persuasion is. It's all about creating, reinforcing, or changing someone's belief. We know about logic, ethics, and pathos in terms of appeals, or credibility rather, I'm sorry. We talked a little bit, hopefully you understand the difference between central and peripheral processing. We looked at a diagram that kind of differentiates central processing from peripheral processing. Now I want to talk about a model that you've probably heard a lot about, and that is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is one that you've probably heard about if you took a psychology class, or just if you've had any college class. I think they talk about this a lot. And it's this idea that we have basic needs, and every person kind of has to have some of these basic needs before we can do other things. And it says here, a person's motivation to reach his or her full potential. As shown in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, a person's basic needs must be met before self-actualization can be achieved. So we can see at the very bottom, you have to have your physiological needs met. If you don't have food, if you don't have water, if you don't have sleep, if you don't feel healthy, then you're not going to be able to be worried about being in a relationship with somebody. Like, you're worried about your next meal. Okay, so it is meant to it's a hierarchy, right? One thing matters before the other. You're not going to be worried about having your best career if you don't feel safe. Right? So the safe is next. You're employed, you have money, you have a safe place to sleep at night. We go up one level, and we have family, we have friends, we have people we connect with. Up one more level, we have some self-respect. We are respected by other people. We have confidence. We like ourselves. And then the very tippy top is this self-actualization. So we feel creative. We engage in problem solving. We have this deeper need to kind of maybe give back or find our purpose in life. But all that's not going to happen if we don't have the things on the bottom. And so why are we talking about this when it comes to persuasion? Well, the idea here is that if you can help someone achieve one of these levels, you can be persuasive. So, and I think that's what a lot of advertisers try to do. And they try to play off some of our fears. Oh, you don't feel pretty enough? Here's some makeup. Oh, you don't weigh the right amount? Here's a diet pill. Oh, you don't feel safe? Here's home security. And so a lot of the things that they sell us are an attempt to satisfy one of these needs that we have. What I want us to do in our proposal is think about how can we offer something to our audience that will help to satisfy one of these categories, if not multiple. Of course, in an ethical way. I think a lot of times advertisers don't always do that in an ethical way. Here's another kind of example here where we're moving from, Maslow's hierarchy of needs over to Monroe's motivated sequence. So hopefully you understand Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I don't talk about it a lot just because I feel like when I do, students typically are like, oh my gosh, I've heard this 1,000 times. So I don't talk about it a lot. If you have other questions though, please do definitely let me know. Okay, the next thing we talk about is Monroe's motivated sequence. Monroe's motivated sequence is something that you've probably heard about if you've taken a public speaking class. It's basically a formula for persuasion. So this may be something that you choose to use as a formula for your proposal presentation that is part of your final presentation. This is definitely an option. And it has 5 steps. It's an awful lot if you think about it. If you ever sat down and watched an infomercial, it's an awful lot like that. So step 1 is you gain their attention. If you don't have your audience attention, you're wasting your time, right? So I always think about the common infomercial where the lady kind of spills the red wine on her white carpet. And that's how you gain the audience's attention. First, you see this dramatic, large glass of red wine spill all over this beautiful white carpet. And of course, this woman gasping and just completely dismayed because her carpet is ruined. And then you've got a need or a problem. Identify a need in your audience or show them that there's a problem. Clearly, red wine on a white carpet is problematic. The third step is the satisfaction or the solution. I usually will call this part the plan. Show them that the solution that resolves the need or the problem. Show them that it will work. And so here, we tell them what our plan is. Usually it's the product. If it's ShamWow, to get all of it, I think it's ShamWow. I've got to brush up, I guess, on my infomercials. Whatever that product is, or if it's some kind of special cloth or some kind of special carpet cleaner, whatever it is, the product becomes the satisfaction or the solution. For us in our proposal, our plan becomes this kind of step 3. Step 4 is the visualization. Here's where you talk about the benefits and the practicality of your plan. So you're activating the circuits in your audience's brain to help them visualize the solution. So instead of just saying, buy this product, you help the customer or the client or the employee or whoever your audience is to see how wonderful your plan is. So by showing us in the infomercial how well the product cleans up the red wine, we're won over. And we're instantly picking up the phone because it's only one easy payment of $29.99, right? It's always $99. I'm not quite sure why. Maybe to get that extra penny out of you. And then finally, we have, usually it's called call to action. In this one, they just call it act. I'm not quite sure why. Close with a call to action to make your audience a part of the solution. So this is where we would have the request to buy the product. And usually here, they always try to offer us something extra, but wait, there's more, right? And you get like a second product for half off. So I would highly encourage you to use this model for your presentation, or maybe even think about using this model within your proposal, mostly because it is effective. I think that it can be used ethically. Definitely something to think about. Okay, if we were in class together, this would be the time when I would pass around ads, and we would evaluate the ads. We would look at them and say, okay, what do you see in this ad? Do you see elements of ELM? Are you processing this centrally or processing this peripherally? Do you see instances of ethos? Are they playing up on credibility? What emotional appeals do you see? Do you see some logical appeals? Do they work? Do they make sense? Are they trying to appeal on some basic level need of yours? Or is it self-actualization? Basically, we would just look at the ads and break them down and try to see what appeals they're using and if they're effective. The second thing that we often do if we're in class together is I would have you sell an item. Sometimes I would even have you sell an item that is very, very difficult to sell. Again, just to help you flex those persuasion muscles, like a bathtub with holes in it, or a stapler that doesn't work. Basically having you sell something that is very difficult. The other activity that we often do, and I can put these online just so you could get a feel of what we would do if we were in an actual classroom together. I do the appeals activity, which is where I have a situation like someone trying to convince you to adopt an animal, or somebody trying to get you to go vegan, or just different kinds of situations where someone's trying to convince you to do something, like go out for Chinese food. And some of them are really serious, like change from a Republican to Democrat, and vice versa. And some of them are more fun and less serious. And then you tell me, okay, what would I do? What appeal would I use? A logical appeal and emotional appeal. Would I use Maslow's? Would I use ELM? And it's really, the purpose is twofold. It's to help you get familiar with some persuasion tools, because these are all tools to use to be successful, but it's also to kind of educate you and get you familiar with some of these terms. All right, so I'm actually going to stop at this point just for the space of the file, and then I will pick up and we can talk about the second part of the PowerPoint, which is the collaboration.